Hello, everyone, and welcome to Molehill Mountain, episode 173. I am Andrew Eisen. So, last week, I said this week I would talk about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, in more detail. A whole spoilery discussion. But the more I thought about it this week, the more I realized I think I said everything I had to say on the matter last week, even though I didn't discuss specifics. Plus, the details of the movie over the past week, I saw it 1 week ago today, the details of the film have just been kind of leaving me. As I said last week, I felt the movie was a bit of a mixed bag. There were things I liked, there were things that I felt didn't work. Um, but I really just don't have much to say about the film. I thought it was all right. I felt it was. I. It felt rushed. It felt underdeveloped. It felt like it had some good ideas, but it felt like those ideas were not executed particularly well. I think the cast is strong. I think the characters are strong. I think visually it's attractive, although some of the effects I think didn't quite work, which is kind of odd for a Star Wars movie. Feels like this one just didn't have as much time as it needed, like it needed another year in the hopper. But if any of y'all have any specific questions about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, story choices, or anything like that that you're curious as to what my opinion is. Jordan asks, but what did Finn want to tell Rey? The movie doesn't care to say. In fact, they just kind of joke about it. I mean, it's kind of gotta be I love you, even though that doesn't feel right. Maybe it's one of those they realized in the edit that the declaration of love was kind of weird and didn't really work. And him constantly chasing after Ray like a lost puppy, Ray, 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 oh Ray, Ray, to the point where she finally like throws him across the room with the force, was coming across as pathetic and annoying. And I wanted to throw him across the room with the force. Um, I don't know what else he could have possibly. It's got to be. I never told you that I loved you. Okay. Doesn't further the story, doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. The bit at the end where, the constant Poe ragging on him about, so, what were you going to say to Ray? Dude, shut up. That stuff was cute. Mainly because of the performances from John Boyega and Oscar Isaac. I mean, the actors are all on their A game. They're all making everything work. The parts of the movie that I enjoyed the most were when the movie just slowed the hell down and had actual scenes with characters talking to each other. The first bit of the movie that I really genuinely enjoyed was when Poe comes back to wherever the Resistance is, and he lands the Millennium Falcon, which is on fire, and Rey just finished her little Jedi obstacle course where she accidentally dropped a tree on BB-8, and they meet together. And it's hi Poe, hi Rey. Oh my God, what did you do to BB-8? She's like, oh my God, what did you do to the Millennium Falcon? He says, what did you the droid? And she says, oh, he's fine. He's not fine. He's scuffed. She says the Millennium Falcon's on fire in 3 places. That whole conversation where they're just standing around talking, that I liked. But most of the movie is just them running from place to place and doesn't have many scenes. Something I didn't mention last week that I would like to mention this week is Rise of Skywalker, I think, is the only film in the entire, what is it, 11 film Star Wars series where I ever sat completely befuddled, completely gobsmacked, dumbfounded at what I was watching. The first couple of minutes of the movie, I was genuinely confused as to what the hell I was looking at. Which, say what you want about the prequels, but while the story doesn't make sense in a lot of cases, I mean, you know what's happening. You know who everyone is and what they're doing. You may not know why. It may not make any damn sense because it's just poorly thought out. But at least you know what's going on. In The Rise of Skywalker, in several places, especially a bunch of them in the very beginning, I was watching, I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. The movie starts out with the opening crawl, which says, "The dead speak!" And it says that the universe or the galaxy has heard a message from the thought dead Emperor Palpatine. And immediately my stupid brain is like, did everyone, was it his voice floating on the wind? Was it like a space radio announcement? That seems kind of an important distinction. Or is it more, metaphorical in that rumors persist that the Emperor is back? I wasn't sure. So I found the opening crawl a little confusing. And then it starts out with Kylo Ren somewhere fighting some people for some reason. Seems really determined, and he's beating the crap out of whoever these people are. And then he finds a green pyramid. And I don't know what that is. You do find out later what it is. But at the beginning of the movie, I'm like, okay, where is he? Who is he fighting? Who are these people? What is he doing? Okay, he got a green pyramid. What is that? And then he hooks it up to his ship. I'm like, what is he? Is it a power source? Turns out it's a map. And then he goes somewhere and he lands and he walks towards a giant building that's floating 20 feet off the ground and has lightning underneath it. Is that what I'm seeing? Is it a giant building floating 20 feet off the ground with lightning underneath it? Is that what I'm looking at, or am I just misinterpreting what I'm looking at? And then suddenly 100 Star Destroyers burst out of the ground. I'm like, what? Where did those come from? Is there an underground facility for building starships and they forgot to build a damn roof? So they had to crash all the ships up through the ceiling? That doesn't seem like a good idea. Are these ghost ships? Are they fully crewed? Okay, so there's Star Destroyers here, but the First Order already has a bunch of Star Destroyers. Is this going to make a difference? Does the First Order know about this? Is this supplementing the First Order? Is this competition for the... What the hell? I have never been that genuinely confused in a Star Wars movie. Now, to be fair, you mostly figure... The movie does explain what the green triangle thing, the pyramid thing is and stuff, but being utterly just slack-jaw confused at what I was actually looking at is a new experience for me as far as Star Wars movies go. So, Jordan says, I wanted Finn to pick up a saber again. His first lightsaber sequence in Force Awakens was pretty awesome. That's true. And plus, he's clearly Force sensitive. I mean, it's not like you have to be Force sensitive to use a lightsaber, but I mean, if they start up the Jedi Order again, which they should not, the Jedi are just, they suck. They're just, no good comes from the Jedi. They just screw everything up. But no, yeah, Finn's cool. He didn't have a whole, they didn't give Finn a lot to do in this movie other than go, Rey! Rey! Throughout the whole movie. What was the alien thingy that appeared for 2 seconds in the very beginning in the Falcon and was even on the poster? Was it the guy who got decapitated? Because he was just a guy helping out. I don't know. Jordan continues. Seems like with a good script, Mark Hamill might come back for what, episode 10? It'd be cool to do some of the EU stuff with Mara Jade and Ben Solo, but age the character to fit Mark Hamill's current. Yeah, yeah, sure, fine, but for me, enough of the Skywalker saga. I am done. I don't want any of it. Just do something else, please. No more Skywalker, no more Solo, no more Palpatine. No, you can play in that timeline, but oh my God, there has to be something else interesting going on in the enormity of the galaxy. I don't. I love the new characters. I love Ray and Finn and Poe and what's her face, who got mainly sidelined for the entire movie, Rose. They're great characters and they're a lot of fun to follow around. Um, and it's mostly the actors doing all the heavy lifting because, in my very very humble opinion, the story just wasn't there this time. Um, I would really just like to get away from the episodes 1 through 9 area of the Star Wars galaxy. Uh, that's one of the things that works for uh, the Mandalorian for me is, well, it's touching on things that happen. It's stuff happening elsewhere in the galaxy. You know, yeah, the child is Baby Yoda. Yeah, the protagonist is Boba Fett. But still, I mean, it's still playing within the universe. It's still using the iconography, but it has its successes. It has its stuff where I felt it came up short. But overall, it was really refreshing just watching new people doing different stuff somewhere else in the Star Wars galaxy. So, uh, in future installments of I'm not done with Star Wars, but I'm glad the Skywalker saga is done. How about Ocean's 14 on Canto Bight? Sure. They actually tried to do, well, it wasn't so much a heist as it was a prison break, but in the Mandalorian episode 5, 6, somewhere in there, they did a prison break episode, which is a really cool idea. Star Wars, I think the universe of Star Wars is open to a lot of um, different genres. The Mandalorian goes kind of Western, but it also, the fourth episode was a whole Seven Samurai riff. The episode I just talked about was a prison break episode. You could absolutely do an Ocean's 11 esque heist movie in the Star Wars universe, knocking over a casino on Canto Bight. I'd be perfectly fine with that. I mean, you could make up a new planet and a new place, but you've got the casino planet of Canto Bight. It's fine. Yeah, so I agree. I'm I would have liked the Rise of Skywalker to end stronger. Um, I felt I feel Rise is it doesn't matter. It could have been better. I had some fun. Overall, I don't think it totally worked. Um, I like the characters. I think the actors are doing great. I just think that I think the movie was rushed. I think Colin Trevorrow. I mentioned this last week. Colin Trevorrow was originally going to do the episode 9, and then he was taken off the project, and J.J. Abrams came on, and from what I understand, they started over, and it's like, well, they had almost 2 solid years. Yeah, but movies are big and complicated. And kind of the same thing happened with Solo. You had Phil Lord and what those two dudes who were doing Solo, and they pretty much scrapped everything they did and had Ron Howard come in and redo the movie. And while Solo turned out, I think, better than I was, well, I know it turned out better than I was expecting. Um, it definitely feels like a movie that was scrapped halfway and restarted. Because there's a lot of stuff in Solo that just, man, off the top of my head, L337, the droid, Lando's droid, her character is very inconsistent throughout the movie. It really feels like a character that they never were sure what they were going to do with her. Um, and it feels like she was kind of a different character in the two different versions of the movies. I had the same problem with what's his face, Kevin in Ghostbusters 2016. One of the issues with that character is they didn't seem to nail down exactly who Kevin was. You know, in some scenes he's like an impossible idiot. Like when he here there's like a fire alarm goes off and he goes, "Oh my gosh, it's loud," covering his eyes, which I think is a dumb joke because literally no one would ever do that. No one is that stupid. That doesn't work for me. But in other scenes, he's not so much stupid as he is just kind of a self-centered, inconsiderate jerk. And it feels like they weren't sure who the character was. Same problem with L3, and I think I didn't I think that may have been Finn's problem in Rise of Skywalker. They I think they had a different direction for him, and they cut it out, and the remnants just make him kind of a whiny dipstick who kind of constantly chases after Rey, and then nothing about that ever resolves. Oh well. Uh, bu- 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 Jordan says, I actually like the trade and political talk in the prequel, so I'd enjoy political drama in Star Wars. You could do that too. Something I mentioned, I think, last week, uh, is that the general broad brush idea of the prequels I actually like. Now, the execution is just utterly terrible, but I do like the idea of this is the story of how a senator manipulates a galactic wide government to pull himself into power and run a galactic empire, all the while corrupting a fresh faced young boy, Skywalker himself. That's a really interesting idea. It's not done well, but it's an interesting idea. I kind of like the idea of unless if you went into the movie not knowing what Star Wars is, the first episode, you don't know that Palpatine's a bad guy. You're not supposed to anyway. You're supposed to get through that entire movie um, not realizing that if Star Wars didn't exist before, but I think they use the fact that you know who Ian McDiarmid is and you know who Senator Palpatine becomes. So he's standing there at the typical group shot at the end of a Star Wars movie, holding a weird ball of light above their heads, smiling, and you're like, "Oh, dude. Oh, dude. He just oh man, he's pulled the wool over a lot of eyes here. That Man, I can't wait to see the weird behind the scenes political machination things that he pulls to make himself the Ember, and how people are going to be, oh my gosh, how we didn't see that coming. There's a lot of really cool stuff you could have done with that, but the movies are just kind of bad. Oh well. Jordan says, Andrew, you have a sickness and need help. You can't go one podcast without segueing into Ghostbusters in a one form or another. You, Jordan, are absolutely right. I guess the cure will be to see Ghostbusters Afterlife when it premieres in July. I don't know if that will help, but it's something I'll definitely try. So, what's interesting about Rise of Skywalker is they introduced two new characters. Well, several, but the two main new characters are Zori Bliss, I think, Kerry Russell's character, um, who's constantly in a helmet except for one part where she ups the visor. That's another that scene where she and Poe are talking. That's a nice scene. It's one of only a handful of actual scenes in the movie. Um, uh, Neat character, cool visual design. Again, does almost nothing. Uh, well, she does a bit, but it's really rushed. They get to the World War One esque Nazi occupied planet, uh, and he runs into Old Flame Zori Bliss, and they do the thing with 3PO, and she says, "Oh, I have a coin here. Have a coin. This will get you onto the Star Destroyer." Okay, bye. I mean, it's fine, but it's so rushed that it doesn't. It just doesn't work. Uh, Also, the movie feels really. Also, the woman that Finn runs into on Endor, I guess it is. Um, I forget her name, but she, like him, is a former stormtrooper who was called upon to to shoot unarmed civilians, and she and the rest of her platoon said no and ditched the Empire. That's a cool story. It doesn't really matter or inform the plot or do anything. It's a neat story. Movie's just overstuffed, so it doesn't really have time for that. Um, Also, it's like, oh, essentially C-3PO's dead. No, he got back. He's fine. R2 backed him up, was backing up his personality after all, so don't have to worry about that. Oh, Chewbacca died. Nope, psych. No, he's not dead. Okay. I mean, they didn't even leave it until the characters find that out. You know? Uh, hmm. This movie had no balls. I don't know. Although it was nice seeing Dennis Lawson as Wedge Antilles for about a second and a half. Lando is a smooth operator, I gotta tell you. Because at the end of the last movie, where they set out the distress call and nobody showed up, Lando managed to get the entire galaxy to show up in a couple of hours. He's a smooth talker. They should have talked to him earlier. Well, whatever. Jordan says the Empire was created because Jar Jar was a Nabooian representative that gave Palpatine the vote of confidence for the Chancellor position. There's a lot of in between, but whatever's. Yeah, I think Padme enters a vote of no confidence for Chancellor Valorum, and then in the next movie, Jar Jar recommends emergency powers to Senator Palpatine, who's like, "Yes, yes, I'll take them with a heavy heart, and I'll totally give them back once we've got this stuff licked. Totally, totes promises, pinky swear." Jordan says Han Solo is so cool, he didn't even need that blue hue to be a Force ghost. Well, to be fair, he's not a Force ghost. He's just a Kylo Ren memory. He explicitly states that. Kylo Ren is like, "You're just a memory," and uh, Han Solo says, "Yeah, your memory." Would have been funny if he stabbed him again. um, yeah, kind of. It's. I think Rise of Skywalker is. It's a better movie than I think than the prequels are. I'm comfortable saying that, but I think it's the easiest to make fun of um, since the prequels. I mean, you can nitpick all of the movies, but I think Rise of Skywalker is going to go down as one of the films that's really easy for YouTube vloggers to just sit there and and poke fun at. It's like, well, like I was mentioning with, Lando just goes around the galaxy in a couple hours, manages to get everybody just because he's such a smooth talker. There's a lot of stuff in the movie like that. Um, the whole bit with the second shuttle that Chewbacca was on that we never saw and had really no good place to be hiding. How did Finn screw that up? you know, um, and, or it's like on Endor, whatever planet that the Death Stars crashed on. It's a good thing that Rey happened to be standing on that one exact spot so that she could line up the profile of the dagger with the Death Star. Because if she was standing anywhere else, that wouldn't work at all. And it's a good thing that the wreckage of the Death Star hasn't, eroded or shifted in however many years it's been sitting in the middle of a very turbulent ocean. Whatever. It's a fun fantasy movie, whatever. Jordan says Kylo is schizophrenic and see people that aren't there. That's our hero, folks. He's not the hero, though. They try to do a bit of redemption, but it doesn't really work. It's one of those movie redemption things. What exactly did he do to redeem himself? Made peace with the fact that he killed his dad, I guess. Fought with Rey at the end, then got thrown off a cliff. He didn't really do much. And the whole, how was it resolved? Uh, Palpatine's gonna fry Rey with Force lightning. She blocks with a saber, and then she gets another saber and blocks two sabers, and that's enough to reflect it back into his stupid face. It's like, Palpatine, didn't you learn? Don't you remember back in Episode 3 where you fired Force lightning at Waste Mindu and he blocked with a lightsaber and it reflected back in your stupid face? The same thing, dude. When you gonna learn? So he had clones of Snoke. Just used one. Or was that the only one that worked and those were all the rejects? I mean, you could poke fun at the movie all day. King Vasuki, hello, King. Says, talking about Rey, or I'm sorry, Kylo mimics Rey's force heal ability and brings her back to life. And it's like, yeah, I knowing movies, I went in going, okay, Kylo's gonna do the Darth Vader thing where he turns away from the dark side, but it's not really full redemption. You can't really redeem that much evil in one act. It doesn't work that way. I mean, that's like me burning down an orphanage and redeeming myself by writing someone a Christmas card. It's like, no, you're not redeemed. Even if I cut my finger on the Christmas card and bled to death, that's still not a redemption. It was a nice card, but that's still not a redemption. Nevertheless, man oh man, does Adam Driver just knock that role out of? I think Kylo Ren is my favorite character in episode 7, 8, and 9. Just a utterly fascinating performance, and I love the fact that I love the Kylo Ren character. I think it's great. I kind of love. It's more hinted at than it is explicitly the point of the movie, but I kind of love that the idea. I kind of love the idea that the First Order is just a bunch of asshole Empire fanboys, just a bunch of whiny loser dorks cosplaying as the Empire. General Hux has this whole thing. He's like, I don't care if we win. I just care that Kylo Ren loses. And it's like, yeah, they're all just that self-centered and petty. I love the fact that Kylo is this entitled whiny, brooding, temper tantrum throwing dipstick. I love that. Um, kudos to the driver for just making that role his own. I thought it was great. Uh, Snake says, I'd like to be playing Space Station 13, but some jerk with botnets is DDoSing all the servers. Stop DDoSing stuff, you jerks. Get says, I'm not an Adam Driver fan. But he was amazing. Yes, he was. Anyway. Jordan says, if I burnt down an orphanage, I'd redeem myself by building a new orphanage and then make a bunch of kids into orphans so it can be used again. There you go. There we go. It's zero sum, man. It's even now. All right, so let us move past Star Wars. I start out saying I have nothing to say about Star Wars, so I talk about Star Wars for half an hour. So let us instead move to Dragon Quest 11, which I am currently playing because it is good. I'm going to just. I really love this game. Dragon Quest has always been. If I started Dragon Quest like with 8, the one on the PS2, it would not be my favorite RPG series. But since I started with the first one, it's my favorite RPG series. The thing about the later games that lowers it in my estimation is something I talked about during my New Game Fuss episode for the game. And that's the hero character has no dialogue or personality or reaction to the world around him, which, works on the NES when you just have little sprites. But it doesn't work when you do exactly the same thing in a fully rendered, fully voiced, 3D camera directed in the cutscenes modern video game. Because your character comes off as an utter sociopath, just someone completely lacking in empathy, someone who does not give the slightest whiff of a poo about anything that's happening. He just seems to have nothing better to do. But if you can get it, actually, I'm kind of amusing myself by watching the cut. I'm almost MST3King the cutscenes here. Because there's this old guy Reb you meet, and it turns out he's your long lost grandfather, and your mother gave her life to save you, and I finally found you, and it's great to be here with you again, and we can finally do the ritual that will set their souls free to rejoin the Yggdrasil tree, and blah 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 blah, and he's breaking down crying, and your hero's standing there staring at him. Like he does not care. It does not affect him the least. I'm your long-lost grandfather, and I can tell you all about the mother you never knew. Hello? Hero? You okay there, hero? just nothing. Other than that, the game's great, though. Snake says, going back to Star Wars, favorite character was Finn. He got shoved to the side as a side character. I wouldn't say. He didn't have really anything to do. I will say that it was nice that he was there. About all, as I mentioned before, about all he did in the movie was chase after Rey and yell her name, which got really irritating. Would have been nice to. I know a lot of people were a little disappointed because Finn and Rey have great chemistry, and so do Rey and Poe. And a lot of people were frustrated with the last movie because it split the characters up, which seems to be kind of the hallmark for the second episode in these trilogies. The same thing happened in Empire. But I think you have your main cast get together in the first movie, and then they separate for the second movie, and that just makes their coming together all the more sweeter in the third. But yeah, it doesn't. Finn doesn't have much to do in this movie, which is a shame. Oh well. Jordan says, well, Andrew, going back to the hero in Dragon Quest, that's how you react most of the time, so I'd say it's pretty accurate. That's true. Uh, So, I would like to talk about a couple of the things in I love in Dragon Quest XI that love why I love it. I love how laid back and charming it is. Most everyone in the game is a decent, good-hearted person, and that's it's just heartwarming. I like that. Um, I will say, you know, another negative to the game. Some of the enemies in the game are so damn cute that the game makes me feel bad for destroying them, like the baby saber cats. I don't want to hurt the little kitties. I don't want to hurt the little kitties. Anyway, back to good stuff. There are when you equip new armor, your character's outfits don't actually change. Their swords and shields will change when you equip new swords and shields. Those are all modeled. But there are a few specific costumes that you can change for the characters, and they are really cute. Um, I currently have Veronica and Selena in these funny polka dot dresses. Uh, pardon me. And I had Silvando, I think his name is, in this really weird outfit. I had a little Veronica in a cat suit, not a Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman cat suit, an actual mascot esque cat suit, which is hilarious. Because she's a Spitfire. She's gets real huffy at people, and it's amazing seeing her in a cat suit. Um, One thing, Veronica, who looks like an 11-year-old, uh, is actually a 20-year-old, but she got kidnapped and they drained her magic, which drained her magic and her age. And she managed to get her magic back, but not her age, so she's wandering around in the body of an 11-year-old. And in a lot of RPGs, you would probably think that this character would be mopey and broody and constantly bringing that up about, oh, everyone's treating me like a child, and oh, I can't even reach the top shelf of the pantry, and oh, I can't wait until. No, she's actually fairly cool with it. I mean, she wants to get back to her old body, but for now she's like, you know what they say, you're only young twice. Haha. She's handling it really well, and I appreciate that. Um, the game has a you, Snake. You think Ray and Kylo have no chemistry? I I definitely disagree with that. um. Oh, Jordan says people are going for Ray and Kylo and Ray. When's my boy Chewie gonna get a fine lay? Maz Kanata. I'm I was, Maz is on the Rebel Resistance planet. I was hoping for just at least one short scene where Chewbacca walks by and she's like, "Hey, Chewbacca." That'd be great. Because they set that up in the first movie where she's like, "Where's my boyfriend?" I like that Wookiee. But missed opportunity. Get says Ray and Kylo. I shipped them so hard I audibly sighed when they kissed. um, well, yeah, Snake goes on to say, "I thought they had no chemistry, and I feel like it was just shoehorned in, but that's just me." Yeah, different people gonna react differently. I remember I was talking to my sister about something the other day, and she described it one way, and I went, "Wow, I don't agree with that at all. That's not what I got out of it at all." So yeah, it is really funny subjective stuff. It's like, oh, these people have great chemistry, and you ask a completely different person, they're like, what? They have no chemistry. What are you talking about? So, anyway, back to Dragon Quest. Costumes are fun. You can forge your own. You have this little forge thing you heat up and hit with a hammer, and you can forge helmets and weapons and clothing out of a forge somehow. I don't know how that works, but it does, and it's kind of fun. I like it. Um, for the first part of the game, there was no collect 6 MacGuffins to unlock the boss kind of quest. Um, you're just now. I figured that would change because it's pretty much every Dragon Quest game. Eventually, there's going to be a boss on the other side of a chasm, and the only way to lower the drawbridge or get the bridge to go across is to find the 6 colorful orbs and put them in their pedestal to create the bridge, right? That's in all the games. That is in this one too, but for the first part of the game, it's fairly linear. You're just on the run from some jerk who thinks you're the Hellspawn and wants to kill you, which actually it gets around what a lot of people like to call ludonarrative dissonance, in the sense that in Breath of the Wild where Ganon's eating the world and Link is like fishing because he's got some other stuff to do and collecting lizards and stuff. It's like, I'll get to it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. This one there's no ticking clock so far. It's just we have reached the point where it's like we want to get to the Yggdrasil tree. We need the 6 orbs to do it. Oh, we actually happen to already have 2 of them, so that's nice. But there's no like, if we don't get there and do the thing, the Dark Lord Demon Spawn will eat the world. There's no countdown clock, so it's very leisurely. We're just we need to find the 4 orbs, but we can take our time. We found a mermaid, and she's looking for her hubby. We can help her out. We got the time. There's this great part in one area of the game where Veronica, who's the 20-year-old woman who's in the body of an 11-year-old, some kid steals her wand, and she's like, "Give that back." And the other characters, sees her facing down this other kid. She's like, "Give me back my wand, you bully!" And they're like, "What is going on here?" "He's took my wand." And the kid's like, "I didn't take it. I just borrowed it. I'll give it back." She's like, "Give me back my wand." He says, "I need it for a thing." And in most RPGs, this would be the point where he says, "My mother is sick and I need the wand so I can cast the spell of throat lodgings so she can hack up the hairball and be well and run the orphanage," and that whole thing. Eric, one of the characters in your party, just grabs the damn wand away from the kid and hands it back to Veronica. There's no, if you go on the quest to find the magic elixir, then I'll give her wand back. No, he just takes it. It's a 10-year-old kid. He just takes the damn wand from him. It's so great. Just give me that. It turns out you still go on the quest for the magic throat lozenge or whatever it is, but I love the fact that he just grabs the wand, hands it to Veronica. He's like, "Here." That was so good. There's a great thing, another great mechanic in this game in that you can sprint. So there are little stalls where you can get a horse and run the horse across the land if you want to just get to one end or the other. And while sprinting with a horse, you just run over enemies. So if you want to get from one place to another and you can't warp there for whatever reason, you can get on your horse and sprint. But if you don't have a horse, you can actually sprint on foot too. Now you can't bowl over enemies like that, but the game does allow you to pick up the pace. It's nice. It's nice. Get says, "I love a leisure game. Side quests are my fave." Yeah, I have like 40 some hours in the game, and I think that's not exactly accurate because there's no good way to pause the game. I think, for example, I have the game running right now, so there's an extra hour being added to my playtime because I didn't save the game and turn it off. You can save the game and just pause it and stand there. The clock still ticks, so oh well. While you're riding on horseback, you can still gather sparkly things off the ground. You don't have to dismount to pick things up off the ground or open treasure chests. That's pretty great. It's common in RPGs these days, but I really admire the fact that the characters who are not in your active party still gain experience. You have a crew of like 7 people, and you can only have 4 in your party at any one time. But if you have, Veronica on the back bench, she's still earning experience and raising level, even though she's not fighting. That's been in RPGs for many years now, but I still appreciate it. Personally, I that's one thing about modern RPGs that I don't care for. I like just getting my crew and sticking with my crew. Like in Secret of Mana, you have guy, little elf dude, and girl. I can't remember their names anymore. And it's just those three throughout the entire game. In Dragon Quest One, it's just hero. In Dragon Quest Two, I think you have three people. In Dragon Quest Three, I don't remember. But in Dragon Quest Four, you start the game with there's 5 chapters. You start the game with Ragnar. Then I think Athena, something like that. I think she gets 2 people, so there's a crew of 3. Then you have Tulun in one, and then you have the sisters, the dancer and the fortune teller, whose name Nia, and I don't remember their names. And then when you get to the 5th chapter, you get the hero and you collect all of those characters. I think you end up with a party of 9, but again, you can only have 4 in your party fighting at the time. So you're at the end of the game and you're fighting Necrosaro, the big bad demon lord of all demondom, and you've got 5 people just hanging out in the wagon sipping tea. And you're like, would you guys you get your asses out of the wagon and help us defeat the demon lord? So that wouldn't be fair if more than 4 of us were fighting the demon lord at one time. We're good, you know. So if one of us dies, are one of you going to get your ass out of the wagon and replace? No, that wouldn't be fair. Make sure you have some Yggdrasil leaves, because those revive fallen party members. I've always kind of hated that because it's dumb. I would rather a smaller group of characters. One RPG that came out in the last 10 years or 15 years, depending on when it came out, that did this the best, in my very humble opinion, is The Last Story, which was on the Wii. And I think there's 7 or 8 characters that you have in your posse. But the way that game works is, depending on where you are in the story, will dictate who is in your active party. So one of your characters will come to you with a quest. It's like, hey, my granddad is captured by goblins. I want to go get him. So obviously the grandkid and you, the hero, are going to be in the party. And then 2 of the others are like, hey, I'll come with you. And then the other 3 are like, yeah, we're doing our own thing. That thing we told you about, we're doing it. So you guys have fun. We'll meet you later. And in that way, via the story, The Last Story forces you to play with different combinations of characters. And it never makes you wonder, wait a minute, why aren't the other 3 people here helping us? Because the story tells you what they're doing. They're off doing their own thing at that time. That's why you're with this particular group of people. I love that. That was so well done. I still say that The Last Story is the best of the Rainfall 3, Pandora's Tower, Xenoblade Chronicles, and The Last Story. Anyway. But another thing that's fairly common in games these days is I went like 2 or 3 weeks without playing this game because I was busy. And one nice thing is every time you start the game, there's a story recap, which catches you up to speed on what the story is so far and where you are and what you're doing. That is really helpful in an RPG. I really appreciate that. That is very good. Hello, Edward. I haven't seen you in the podcast for a while. Hello. Jordan says I left my fat PS2 on for days at a time because I was too lazy to turn it off after saving, and the thing still works. Great. That's right, Sue. Sprite guy, sprite, and girl for Secret of Mana. Hero for DQ1, 2 has. Right. Hero for DQ1, DQ2 has 3 heroes. That's right. Yeah. Edward says I need to play The Last Story. I think everyone should give that one a try. I really liked it. There's only one major town in the game, but it's a really good town. Basically, it's a hub area that all the quests branch out from. So, oh, you got the DQ 1 through 3 on Switch, huh? Nice. Snake says, if it's 2020, does that mean I can call all the years leading up to 2030 the Roaring Twenties? You can. And it's nice that we're in the 20s because it was always awkward referring to the last 2 decades. It's like people tried the aughts, which just never sounded right, or the teens. Never really sounded right. Now that we're in the 20s, sounds good. So, did I see the Pennywise mod for Resident Evil 2? I've seen a few of them. One was Pennywise, which is funny. I think the funniest one is Thomas the Tank Engine. But I've seen a couple of them. Yeah, they're really funny. Um, I wrote this down because it was so funny. Throughout the game, you can break into people's houses and take their stuff because you're the hero and you have that privilege. But you can also read stuff on their shelves. And one is a diary of some adventurer. And here's the line. It says, "This is what you're reading out of the book. My name is of little consequence. But if you must call me something, call me pseudonym." I burst out laughing at that, and I wrote it down because that's the type of humor in this game. I love that pseudonym. I love it. There's a casino in this game. I've probably spent like a quarter of my game time just in the casino. And you hit the casino fairly early in the adventure. I'm like, oh no. I'm glad the world isn't on fire like Australia, because I'm not going to save the world because I got lots of coins to earn playing the slime slots here because I want to get the sword. Uh, Dragon Quest is good. There is a sequence in I after I finally tore myself away from the casino, I went to Octagonia, which is basically an MMA tournament town, and got in and entered the tournament. And the whole twist is the guy you're paired up with he's the guy who runs the orphanage, right? And he's been juicing in order to win the tournaments to get the prize money so that he can pay for the orphanage and feed the kids and clothe the kids and stuff. Oh, okay, we can kind of see that, but see, he's been juicing with like spider juice, giant spider juice, because there's a giant spider, like monstrously like Shelob-sized spider, living beneath the orphanage, that has said, okay, what I need you to do is kidnap people, and I will suck their essence out, and I'll share some with you, which you can use to win the tournaments to make money to run the orphanage. So you notice that some of the tournament participants have gone missing, and you finally track them down to the spider's lair, and there's all these people in cocoons just hanging from the ceiling. It's kind of similar to that scene in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, where you see all the people in the spun sugar. What is that called? Cotton candy cocoons. It looks like that. And so you beat and the spider is cute, of course it is. But you beat the spider, and the guy who's juicing is like, I did it for the kids, and I learned my lesson, and I just wanted to help the kids. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but you did murder like several dozen people, right? I mean, they're not okay, right? They're all dead, right? And so the cutscene ends, and it's like, we've got to go finish this tournament. So they go out into the tournament, and he does the whole thing where he confesses in front of the crowd. I was juicing with the venom given to me by a spider who sucked it out of all the people I kidnapped. And the crowd is, we still love you, Vince! And everyone is like, he's a good-hearted person who cares about the kids. I'm like, he still murdered several dozen people, didn't he? I mean, I may have missed it, but I don't think these people are okay. I think they're dead. Yeah, but of course, and your hero just stands there like this the entire time. I'm your long-lost grandfather. I'm your long-lost adopted sister, kind of. Just nothing phases this boy. Oh, well. Snake says my video game recommendation for Andrew are Hollow Knight, which I would actually like to play. That does look good. Under Rail and Space Station 13. Not familiar with those two. Edward says what and what? There's an MMA tournament. Yeah, well, it's yes, actually, it is mixed martial arts. How it works is it's called the town is Octagonia. Yeah, the Octagon. Um, they basically draw lots and pair people up randomly. So you have two teams of two fighting each other in an elimination tournament, and everyone wears masks, even though everyone knows who everyone is. It's just tradition, I guess. It's pretty great. Jordan says I've been falling back in love with the PS2 and buying anything that looks decent and cheap. Any recommendations? Sure, Dragon Quest VIII. Did you ever play Bully? Rockstar game came out in 2006, I think. They've been rumored to actually having a sequel to that for years. Genuinely good game. I actually wrote the IGN's guide for it. Really liked that game, and I would like a sequel to it. I thought it was really good. That's what pops into my head. Let's see. Snake says Coliseum Road to Freedom. You play as a slave, and the entire game is you fighting gladiator games to make money to pay out your debt to buy your freedom. I don't recall that one. So, we've already made it to 8 o'clock about. Tales of Symphonia come to the PS2? Yeah, I think there's a bunch of Tales games on the PS2. Which Tales game did I play? Let's see. Let me... where is it? I'm looking at my shelf of games. I don't see it. Where is it? Do I not have these in alphabetical order? Huh. Hang on, this is going to drive me nuts. Hang on. Oh, it's a GameCube game. Tales of Symphonia was on GameCube. Yeah, I played Tales of Symphonia. Symphonia. Didn't really care for it. And so I never played any of the other Tales games. It was okay. I thought it was just kind of a middlingly average RPG. Eh. Edward says play Yakuza 1 on PS2. You know... the question is, should you play Yakuza 1 on the PS2, or just play Yakuza Kiwami on the PS4? I think is what it's on. That's a tough call, because I think there's value in seeing where the series started. But the first two Yakuza games on the PS2 are really mechanically clunky. They're kind of hard and frustrating to play. They are fixed angle, kind of old Resident Evil style fixed angle games where you run around the Kamurocho and the camera switches as you get to the edge of the screen, which can be a little disorienting. It's not a problem, but the loading between scenes is a little irritating. Every time you get into a fight, the transition into the actual battle, that load time is really long, and that gets really irritating. And the dub is bad, like really painfully bad. But there is some value to seeing where it all started. But for most people, I would say Kiwami is probably your better bet. Easier to find, I would say. But I leave that to you. Let's see. Flashbacks to Anthem load times, yeah. I would like to talk about Resident Evil 2. So I played Resident Evil 2 Remake. I played all 4 paths in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Leon first, Claire second, Claire first, Leon second. It's a great game. Really enjoyed it. It's gorgeous looking. It plays great. It's a lot of fun to play. The characters are cool. The story is great. I love the way they remixed the different locations and expanded other areas. But what I want to talk about is something that I feel that Resident Evil 2 Original does better than the remake. And that is, in the original Resident Evil, you could play as either Jill or Chris. So if you played as Jill, you entered the mansion and Barry was there and Wesker was there, and you went your separate ways. Wesker you never really saw again until the very, very end. But Barry you ran into here and there. He was your companion character. You played through the game, you get to the end, you find Chris, he's been sitting in a jail cell the entire time. But if you play the game as Chris, you enter the mansion, Wesker's there, and I think it's just Wesker, and he goes off, and then you run into Rebecca later, and she becomes your companion throughout the game. And then you find that Jill's been sitting in a jail cell throughout the entire game. So Chris's playthrough and Jill's playthrough kind of exist in their own separate universes, right? It's not here's what Jill was doing while Chris was running around. No, that's not how it works. It's just, here's the adventure if Chris was the lead. Here's the adventure if Jill was the lead. But when they did Resident Evil 2, they did something really super cool. Claire and Leon meet each other, and they get separated at the very beginning of the game. Now, whichever character you start with, that character goes into the police station and meets up with, and they're like, meet me at the police station. They both make their own way to the police station, and then down through the sewers and into the Umbrella facility. Now, they cross each other's paths several times. They talk to each other over the radio. So when you play the game a second time as the other character, you don't just play through the exact same path like you did in the first game. You actually play from the other side of the story. And I'll give you a couple examples of how that works. So, in the this is not how you play the game, but this is just the opening cutscene. My belt is caught on a piece of chair. There we go. So Claire drives her motorcycle into Raccoon City. She's looking for her brother. She stops off in a diner. There's a zombie in the diner. It starts chasing her. She runs out the back door into an alley where she meets Leon. And they run together into a police car and then drive to the police station. When you start the game as Leon, he drives into town and stops his police car because he sees a body lying on the road. He gets out, he pokes the body with a stick, and it turns out to be a zombie that's trying to eat him. And he's like, oh crap, there's other zombies on the street. And he's like, stay back, everybody, and he backs into an alley. And then Claire comes bursting out a door in the side of the building. And it's like, oh, so that's how Chris got outside that door, because he was backing away from zombies. You see it from the other perspective. So, when probably the canon path through the game is Claire A, Leon B, because that's the one where Sherry gets infected, which is a plot point that pops up in Resident Evil 6. So, that's the path I'll describe. So, Claire and Leon get separated and say, meet me at the RPD, the Raccoon Police Department. So Claire goes to the police department, and she meets Marvin Brownaugh. She goes upstairs to the Star's office, finds out her brother isn't there, walks outside the office, and she sees little Sherry Birkin, little girl, who's being menaced by a zombie, and she runs out of the room. And so Claire chases her and takes down the zombie, chases her in the other room, and runs into Leon. She's like, Leon, you're okay. Hey, did you see a little girl? And he goes, yeah, you just missed her. She's like, we got to find her way out of here, but I got to find that little girl. And he's like, okay, you find the girl, I'll find a way out. Here's a radio, keep in touch. So, when you play as Leon, Claire goes into the police. She goes through a gun shop and through like some back alleys, through a basketball court, and through the front door of the police station. Leon, when you play as him, goes around the back of the police station and comes in like through a maintenance shed and then up the fire escape in the back near where the helicopter crashes. And then he's walking through the second floor of the police station and he sees a little Sherry run past him and then dive through a vent or something. He's like, "The hell was that?" And then Claire comes into the room and she goes, "Leon, you're okay. Did you see a little girl run past?" And Leon says, "Yeah, you just missed her. Here's a radio. Keep in touch." So you're like, "Oh, okay. So that's what Leon was doing while they. Okay, I see how this is working." And when Claire finds, she blows up part of a wall because a helicopter crashes into the building. She blows up a wall, finds Sherry, and then she radios Leon. She's like, "I found Sherry, and I blew up the wall." And so when you're playing as Leon, you'll be wandering around doing your own thing, and you'll get a radio call from Claire saying, "Hey, I found the girl and I blew up a wall," and you can go and you can find a hole in the wall. And then later you'll get the she radios later. This is, "Hey, we're leaving through the sewers. Follow us when you can." So Claire and Sherry, they take a cable car across the thingy to get to the big elevator that goes down. And when Leon gets there, he has to call the cable car back. And you're like, "Oh, of course, because Claire and Sherry were already through here, so we have to call it back." And you ride it over and you find the elevator, but it's down, so you have to crawl into some service area to get the elevator to come back up because Claire and Sherry already wrote it down. So as you go through the game, the things that you did as the first character have repercussions in the second playthrough. Not only do you run into the character and talk to them several times throughout the adventure, but stuff that the first person does, like blowing up that wall, or Leon and Ada moving the van out of the way in front of the kennel and police precinct. But if the first character blows up the alligator, the second character doesn't meet the alligator. If the first character does not take all of the items in the weapons locker, the second character will get the items in the weapon locker. If you take all the items in the weapon locker, the second character shows up and there's nothing left for them. The first character fights a different set of bosses. The second character and the second character fights it. You both fight William Birkin, but you fight him in different stages. So the first character. So Claire, playing it first, will spot William Birkin like on a catwalk, and then he implants Sherry, and then you fight a version of him when you ride down the elevator, and then you fight another version of him later in another service area before you hit the train. When you play as the second character, you don't fight William. You fight William Birkin, and then you fight a different form of William Birkin on the elevator, and then you fight the Mr. X Tyrant, and then you fight the big slimy version of William Birkin on the train. Oh, there's a whole other part where Claire sees Leon on the camera. She's like, "Hey, I gotta go do a thing. Get Sherry from the security room and take her to the train." And when you play as Leon, you suddenly hear, "Hey, I see you on camera. Go get Sherry," and you do. So you see that from the other side. When you're playing as Claire, suddenly the self-destruct sequence goes off, and you're like, "The hell happened here?" When you play as Leon, you find out that the Tyrant slammed Ada into a control panel and set off the blow-up switch. So you find out how that happened. It is so damn cool, and almost none of that is in the remake. The remake is essentially the same game in all four paths. There is very little difference. You do have Leon has Ada as a sidekick character, and Claire has Sherry as a sidekick character. Whoever goes first meets with Marvin Branagh, the cop, and each character has an exclusive boss, and that's it. You fight both of you in both playthroughs. You fight William Birkin in the exact same place, in the exact same way at the exact same stage of mutation. You also don't talk with each other. You do, after you split up at the car, you do meet each other once, but you don't, like, here's a radio. You never talk to each other again until the very end of the game. In fact, the first time Leon meets Sherry is when he gets on the train at the end of the game. He's like, who's that? She goes, that's Sherry. And he goes, okay. It's still a good game. It's still a lot of fun, but oh man, that was my favorite thing about Resident Evil 2. It doesn't feel like, and in fact, a lot of the stuff that happens in the second playthrough contradicts what happens in the first playthrough. Like, Annette Birkin dies two completely different ways in what's supposed to be the same timeline. The Tyrant dies. Mr. X dies in two completely different places, which is weird. I mean, there could be more than one Tyrant, I suppose, but that, if you know the wider lore of Resident Evil, there is more than one Tyrant. But in this specific game, there's no indication that there's more than one. It's just really weird. It's like, well, wait, how could Mr. X die here? Because Leon fought him later. What? So, Chris has a secret level where you have to hunt down Leon so he can continue the Redfield bloodline. Edward says, I remember playing Resident Evil 2 in the N64. Yeah, I think that's where I first played it. Then I did spend more than I really wanted to get the GameCube versions of Resident Evil 2, 3, and Code Veronica. And then I got the remake of 1, and then they came out with Resident Evil 0, and then Resident Evil 4, and I've played 5 and 6, and the Revelations 1 and 2, and 7. I love Resident Evil. Really looking forward to Resident Evil 3. So again, as much as I'm complaining here, I do want to make clear that I think Resident Evil Remake is very good. I'm just really disappointed that it doesn't have that same feeling of two stories happening simultaneously. It feels a lot closer to the first game, where it's more of a, well, what if Chris was the hero instead of Jill? How would that change things? Resident Evil 2 didn't do that. It was, Leon and Claire both had their own adventures in the Raccoon City Police Department the same night at the same time. And here's both of their adventures that happened simultaneously. And that was so cool. And that doesn't really happen in the remake, and that's really disappointing. Because it was really cool in the original, man. Oh well. But Resident Evil 3 is just one character. It's Jill Valentine as she tries to escape Raccoon City with the Nemesis chasing her down. Now, what I find really interesting is Mr. X in the original Resident Evil 2 was a scripted event. You would run into him at predetermined times. He didn't just chase you all over the damn map. When you got to Resident Evil 3, the Nemesis was essentially Mr. X on steroids. It was still scripted events, but he would chase you around the map until you did something specific or you pumped enough lead into him. When Resident Evil 2 Remake rolled around, they kind of took the idea of Nemesis from 3 and just gave him full reign to chase you throughout the entire map until you left the map. So it makes me wonder what exactly they're going to do with Nemesis in the remake. Because Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 Remake really feels like what you'd expect the Nemesis to be in the Resident Evil 3 remake. But if Nemesis in 3 Remake is essentially just Mr. X from 2 Make, that's gonna feel a little disappointing. I mean, it won't be bad, but it will feel like, oh, it's exactly the same thing that was in the last game. Okay. Now, personally, I actually like the scripted event version of this character better. I think that helps gameplay because the way I play these survival horror games is I creep around and I look at the set dressing and I um, explore and play with stuff, and I don't like constantly being chased around. I don't like having to keep moving. Um, Luckily, in Resident Evil 2 Remake, Mr. X doesn't really show up until you're pretty close to leaving the station. So by the time he shows up, you have most of the doors unlocked, and you can run in big loops to get around him, which I thought was a really smart design decision. I was very concerned watching the trailers for this game that he'd just be there instantly and just be constantly on your butt. And I was afraid that that would just be really annoying to me. Like, oh my god, I can't do anything. I can't take my time and look around and explore and search for items and goodies because this guy's constantly breathing down my neck. But that's actually not the way it plays. So that's nice. Anyway, Resident Evil 2 Remake is great, but the whole two different characters having simultaneous adventures, that was done better in the original. So, Jordan says Xander needs a survival horror where you just play as a home buyer, looking at every detail. You know, that's probably one of the reasons I enjoyed what was it called, Gone Home, uh, because that game is you go home to a house, and the game is figuring out where everybody is and or what happened to them. And you do that by wandering around the home and looking at stuff. So you go into the closet and you see like a park ranger uniform, and you see a name tag, and you're like, oh, okay, so the mom, her name is Amanda, and she works as a park ranger. Okay. And you start piecing together who you are and who the people in the house are and why no one's here and what happened to them. And I really enjoyed that game. I thought it was a lot of fun piecing that mystery together because I play it exactly like I play Resident Evil games. I wander around slowly and I look at everything. I look at all of the VHS cassette tapes to see what movies they have on their shelves. If there's a bookshelf or a stack of books, I always look and try and see if the textures are high res enough that I can actually read the titles. And usually it's the same 10 books over and over, but I always enjoy looking at the set dressings, and Gone Home was kind of set dressings the game. So I really enjoyed that one. Um, I actually talked with Susan Arndt about this, and we both came to the agreement that neither of us would pay $20 for Gone Home, but $5, yeah. I like that game. I thought it was fun. Um, Jordan said PC versions of games. Get the PC versions. You can take out the enemies and just lounge around. Now, yeah, I don't dislike the enemies. Uh, but once I put down the zombies, it's like, okay, I put down the zombies, now I can explore the STARS office. But when Mr. X won't go into the STARS office, but I think you understand my point. I've taken care of the threat, now I can relax and explore. Unless Mr. X comes kicking down the door. Another thing that I like about Resident Evil 2, it might cheat this a little bit. I didn't check, but the zombies and lickers and zombie dogs and stuff that you take down, stay where you left them. That's pretty cool. Because in the old games they just kind of bubbled and fizzed and disappeared. In this game, the zombie corpses are where you left them, at least for the most part. I didn't notice any faking that, so that was pretty cool. I did notice though that no giant spiders in the game. There are no giant spiders in the sewer. The big moth was gone too. Ah, ah. how can you have Resident Evil 2 without the classic giant moth? Actually, the giant moth could go either way. Oh, there's another thing in the original Resident Evil 2. There's this door that requires two fingerprints. So the first character has to put in their fingerprint, and then when you play through as a second character, you put in your fingerprint. You can open the door and get some stuff. That's not in the game. Um, in Claire's scenario, Chief Irons, he's implanted by William Birkin and he explodes. With Leon, you can go find his body later if you backtrack through the stuff. So you can see the results of, like, the wall that Claire blows up. You can see that. Ada and Leon push the van out of the way. Claire can go see that has happened later. There's a lot of things like that happen in the game where you can see the results of stuff that the other character did. There's almost none of that in Remake. For example, the second character to go through does not have to call back the cable car. It's just still there. You know? Ada does crash a SWAT van into the Tyrant in Leon's campaign. I don't recall if the wreckage is there in Claire's campaign. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't remember that it is, but it could be, and I just overlooked it. Not sure. Claire, whoever goes first, does actually leave the other one a note at the cable car. So, I mean, that's one thing. That element disappointed me. I won't lie. I really would have liked to see them. It reminds me of Punch-Out for the Wii. When I first saw trailers for that game, I was super excited because they showed off revamped 3D versions of Glass Joe and Von Kaiser and King Hippo and brand new character Disco Kid. And oh man, I'm a big fan of Punch-Out. I was really excited for this game. I'm like, oh, they've got these really cool modern up-to-date versions of classic characters like Glass Joe and King Hippo, and they've got new characters like Disco Kid. I can't wait to see what other new characters they've come up with. And then I played Punch-Out for the Wii, and Disco Kid was literally the only new character in the game. Unless you count hidden character Donkey Kong, which I'm not, but if you want to count him, then 2. Although Donkey Kong's not a new character, but he's new to Punch-Out, so I guess you could count him. The point is there's 12 or 13, 12 characters in the game, and only one of them's new. The rest of them were from the old games. And they're significantly different, though, so it's not a bad game. I love Punch-Out on the Wii, but I was really surprised and honestly kind of let down that Disco Kid was the only new character. Like, they shot their creative wad with that one character. They're like, I got nothing else. Bring back Soda Popinski. Bring back Aaron Ryan. Everyone remembers Aaron Ryan, right? No. But they did make Aaron Ryan a great character. He's very memorable in Punch-Out Wii. But it was that same kind of thing. I had an expectation that was not met, and even though the game was really, really good and I want more, I'll admit, when I don't get everything I want, I am disappointed. Oh well. Edward says, I played Gone Home for free with Xbox Live Gold and came away disappointed. I didn't get nothing from it. That's understandable. That is definitely not a game for everybody. I really liked it, though. And I forget the company that did that, but they had another game fairly recently that I'd like to play. I forget what it's called, but it's takes place in space. You're a character on a space station, and you just wander around and look at audio logs and recordings of what happened to everybody last time. Very slow-paced, very walk around and see what happened kind of game. Definitely not for everybody. So, yeah, if you play... Gone Home is definitely not a game I could readily recommend to everybody. Only to certain people, because it's a very specific... It's definitely a niche game. It's for very specific tastes. But for those specific tastes, I think it does a really nice job. So, all right, yeah, we've gone over here. So let us break until next week. Actually, no, I'll be gone next week, so no podcast next week. I will see y'all Saturday after next. Edward, good to see you in the chat. And the rest of you, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you back here for another episode of Molehill Mountain in 2 weeks. Follow me on Twitter @Andrew Eisen. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.